Game 8 of the World Chess Championship between Viswanathan Anand and Magnus Carlsen took place in Chennai today. Carlsen, the challenger of course, has a 2-point lead. Today he had white. Now when you have white, you have the chance to try and grab the initiative. So the question was, how hard would Carlsen push today? Well, we had the first little surprise on the first move. He played e4, which he hasn't so far done in the match. After a little reflection, Anand decided to play very solidly, and in the Spanish, Anand played the Berlin variation, which of course Carlsen has played so far in this match with success. And now here, Carlsen declined to play into this endgame that they had, for example, in game 4. Now, this endgame is actually very dynamic. There's an imbalance in the position, and you can, I think, very often both sides can play for a win, as we saw in game 4. But today, Carlsen played a calmer move. He played the rook out, attacking the knight. Now, this is a very familiar variation. It's been played many, many times before. The knight has to drop back, attacking the bishop here. And Carlsen took the pawn. Now, of course, that bishop can't be taken in this position, because then there is a deadly discovered check to the king, and the knight would take the queen. But, of course, Anand blocked the e-file, blocked the rook, and prepared to castle. So now the bishop is actually attacked. So the bishop has to retreat. And Anand exchanged off and castled. So Carlsen played d4. Now, it is quite clear from this position that white has a small advantage, because it's much easier for white to bring out his pieces. Whereas for black, it's not so simple. You can see that this bishop at the moment can't move at all, and this knight blocks this d-pawn. Black needs to move out that d-pawn first, and only then move the bishop. So black is in a little bit of a tangle. However, this is a very well-known position, and with accuracy, black can develop very easily. Anand exchange rooks, very good idea. That just takes a little bit of pressure off. Curiously, this position, this exact position, was reached in a game in the very first World Championship match in 1886 between Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort. In that game, Zukertort played knight to f5 and actually eventually won the game. It's interesting to see theory hasn't developed that much in over 100 years. But today, Anand played knight e8. Similar idea. You move the knight, then you can move the d-pawn and develop this bishop. So you can see that black is lagging a little bit behind in development, but also that there are no real weaknesses in black's position. So it's actually very difficult for white to use this advantage, this lead in development. White stands better here, but black develops his pieces very, very easily now. So he's catching up. Really, white can't do very much at all. I mean, you can see the pawn structure is almost completely symmetrical. Good move from Anand. What he wants to do is bring that knight to the centre, so that you can see that the rook and the queen stand very well on this open file. So this will prevent the queen and rook activating on that open file. So it's very difficult for white to do anything. Carlsen exchanged and plonked the knight in the middle. Anand brought the rook over, preparing to challenge on the e-file. And here, well, you can see the knight attacks the queen. Here there's a little trap, which, well, both players saw actually. If the queen comes to g5, which looks like an active square, then white can play f4. And this is very, very strong. Let's see, if this is taken, then of course we take the rook. Let's go back. If it's taken with the queen, then we hit the queen with the rook. The queen goes back, and now there's a knight fork. So white will win the rook here. Let's go back. If, let me see, queen to the side, then again there's another knight fork. And if the queen retreats back here, then this move is very strong, threatening knight to f6 and this familiar knight fork. If the knight goes back, then we deliver the knight fork anyway. And if the queen takes, rook takes check, and the king has an escape square here, so white should win with queen against rook and knight. But of course Anand wasn't born yesterday and saw through that very, very easily, and so instead just dropped the queen back. And Carlsen played queen e5. So this is exactly as in the variation that we've just considered, except the pawn stands here and not f4. Now there's a huge difference. Let's take a look. So this was the game continuation. Now, if white attempts this knight fork, this actually loses, because in this case it's checkmate, because you'll see the pawn stands here, so the king simply can't escape up the board. So that wouldn't be too clever. And the queen can't retreat here because, again, there's the back rank checkmate. So Carlsen has to take this rook. Of course, he'd foreseen all of this. It's not too complicated to calculate. So the rook takes the knight. And basically, this is just a way of exchanging off all the pieces. And here they've reached a completely level endgame. In this kind of king and pawn ending, the only way to make progress is to try and break through with your king. But here, well, you can just block out the other player very easily. And they went through the motions of making a few pawn moves. But soon the position was completely blocked and they agreed to a draw. Not a very interesting game. Afterwards, Magnus Carlsen said, "I didn't particularly mind a draw, as was evident from my play." So, well, why not? Now there are just 4 games left in the match, so Carlsen is getting a step closer to winning. What about Anand? Well, I think for him, he had the black pieces, he's happy to draw, and, well, this was a prelude before the big battle in the next game. Tomorrow is a free day for the players, so Anand has a whole day to prepare a dangerous weapon, because he'll have the white pieces in the next game. Anand said after this game, "The match situation speaks for itself, and it's my job to liven it up," which I guess I'll do in the next game. Okay, so for game 9, we can expect Anand to come out with all guns blazing. Till then.